everybody. So we don't have a lot of time. It's like a 25-minute session, and there's a lot to talk about when it comes to esports. So we're going to jump right into it. And I think a good place to start is to figure out where we're at today in terms of esports betting in North America. So let's start with Ed. Since you're the data guy, you have all the information about bets made. So how much activity is there in North America compared to the rest of the world, in a nutshell?
I'll try and keep it in a nutshell. So, Ed, Birkin, H2, we provide data on the gambling industry, so hopefully give a bit more background and let the esports guys tell you about esports. We put together a data set in 2000 when everyone was telling me about how big the esports industry was. But the esports industry and esports betting are two very different things. So, not wanting to be negative on it here, but it's not that big in terms of betting. Now, there's various reasons for this. We have some data that's actual, some that's estimates. I mean, to put it into context, in the UK with actual data, it went from 1% of total betting in 2020 to 0.5% in 2021 to 0.25% today. So it's actually a third of the size now than it was in 2020, and it's half the size it was last year. Now, there are other markets that are growing quickly, some of the Nordics. You know, the US is a bit difficult. There's not many states that report that granularity of detail, but if we take someone like Colorado, they list a large number of states of sports that they give data on, and by the time you take out the major leagues, MMA, golf, you then get other at 1.7% of revenue. So if you assume esports is even 30% of that, you extrapolate that out, you know, 0.5% of the whole market, you're looking about 30 million for the regulated industry. Now, our view is that the majority of esports betting takes place with illegal operators. There's much fewer restrictions, and I know you guys are going to talk about that. So, you know, potentially it's a $100 million market, or just under, for the US as a whole. But in terms of the regulated, you know, we struggle to see it being much above 30 million. That's pre-bonuses. So by the time you take those into account, you know, you're talking maybe 20 million of net win, you know, in a market that was generating 6.5 billion in sports betting last year. All right. Thanks, Ed. Yeah, talking about the betting volume, that certainly does exist. One of the activities that my organization, the Esports Integrity Commission, that we track is betting traffic, both legal and illegal. Obviously, the illegal side is sort of a little gray, and take it with a pinch of salt. But North America reports from pre-pandemic was hovering around $300 million of transactions. So the market is there, right? So if I toss it over to our data guys, Moritz and Vlastimil. Sorry.
No worries.
What do you guys, what traffic do you see from your customers and even just from data at large? You know, is there a consumption? Are the players there?
I mean, you mentioned two pockets so far. There's the US market, which, you know, mainly due to regulatory slowness in some states and in recognizing esports too. Doesn't see a lot of investment by operators, but certainly there's a trend in a handle that's evolving. And you mentioned the illegal or gray markets too. There's also a huge esports market in the regulated strongholds that you have in Europe and other territories where there is regulation in place. And this is where obviously the esports betting market sees a lot of drive. So we think a lot of brands that we already partner with, we supply data to, that we work with and helping them to figure out esports and navigate the space. They have enough good case studies from abroad to look at in other markets. And ultimately, it does clearly work as a way to get to a new audience and to also develop a way that your product is kind of a fit for a new generation of consumer, a new generation of punters who care about different experiences or who are used to a different level of being engaged with and different sets of technologies to do so. Being a data platform in the space, we obviously come at it very much from the data angle, and we see tremendous growth generally. And we also been quite involved on the US side, so together with Vlastimil, Odin as one of our partners, and trying to help the regulators to figure out frameworks that are scalable and make it easier for operators to jump into the market and develop their position in it.
I have to agree with Moritz. I'm from Odin. We do esports, analytics, odds, risk management, and iframe services. And Yeah, the esports is a global phenomenon. It's huge. Like, it's hard to get the correct numbers, but there are some predictions and some estimates that the, big whole global betting handle for esports can be around 14 billion. So it's, it's here. It's a globally big phenomenon. It's on all continents. It's, of course, Asia, South America, Europe, CIS, even in Africa. So it's just a question of time, when it comes to US. And I agree that there'll be some necessary product innovation, like focusing on the player props, because this is a big thing in the US, and you need data for it. So this is why our partnership with Grid to get data and to offer the most interesting product for bettors. And of course, we need to work with regulators and explain them what they need to do, how they think about esports. For example, we were speaking with one of the regulators, and they told us that esport is not a sport because the players are not moving. So then, there is a big gap we need to, overcome with regulators and explain them that it is a sport. They are doing a lot of exercise. It's, very mentally challenging, and they can burn out in 25 and, just retire. So it's very physically demanding sport as well. So there needs to be some education, and we definitely want to participate in this.
Great. Well, while we're at this, if any of you have any questions along the way, please try to grab my attention, and we can always jump into some questions as well from the audience. But I think one thing that's always somewhat confusing with esports is that we always talk about esports, and it sounds like it's just one thing. Right? And while we don't really just talk about sports as just one thing, because we know that sports isn't one thing, but esports isn't one thing either. And all the games are actually quite radically different from one another. Off stage we were talking about the kind of games that we watch, and even people like us who are into esports, there might be games that we totally don't understand. Like it's like, yeah, it looks interesting, but I might play it, but I don't know what's going on. Things like League of Legends, for example, which is really complicated. Whereas, and then you contrast that with something like Street Fighter, which is sort of very easy to understand. Two guys go in the hall, one guy comes out winner. Easy to figure out. Now, I think one interesting challenge here, especially in the U.S., part outside of North America, is the diversity in regulations that we have. In the U.S., very much catalog-based, so it's just like a white hole kind of situation. And I'm sure earlier in the day you've heard, with Las Vegas, they have the advisory panel that pre-approves certain games and certain leagues. They can go, same thing in New Jersey. But other states may have varying rules, or they have to pre-approve. Ontario, on the other hand, when they passed their rules, just simply classified esports as a sport, and as a sport, as long as it's regulated and all that, and you can ensure the integrity, be their guest, take bets on it, right? So with that, Billy, since you guys operate in Ontario, would you like to kind of tell us a little bit more about how those regulation contrast with what's going on here in the US, and how that could potentially be creating some friction in terms of adoption?
Well, in Canada, you have a clear framework to operate in, and we're actually really encouraged by the growth that we've seen in the Canadian market since we launched there. So, we've been taking our approach as Rivalry. We're a esports-focused sportsbook and casino. We use esports as the top of funnel to acquire and engage and retain the next generation consumer, which is like Gen Z and Millennial. So that's the play, but we have a playbook that we operate with globally that's going really well. We're experiencing a ton of growth. We use that same exact playbook in Ontario. So we're not competing in traditional sports like for NHL, NFL, et cetera. But we're able to clearly operate our playbook for the esports audience, and we're seeing a lot of growth in League of Legends, CSGO. We have some really good activations going, and we're month over month growing the esports business in Canada. We look at the United States. We think there's going to be a really big opportunity eventually in the US. I think to the points the guys were making, like regulatory-wise, it represents a lot of challenges because you don't have the clear guidelines and the clear framework. But if you look at media consumption habits of people under the age of 30, gaming being a primary, category, whether it's Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, et cetera, this is where the next generation consumer is. So regulation over some duration of time will sort itself out in these markets, and esports as a theme is really big in America, and I think it's inevitable that esports betting, you'll see similar trends and demographics in the US as we're seeing in Canada and overall in our global portfolio.
Great. And on that note, I'm also want to talk a little bit about the innovation in the realm of esports bets. It's not just the traditional sports books. Like in New Jersey, now they're talking about potential for PvP. And I know Rivalry, you guys do some PvP work as well. And your background comes from PvP stuff at Virgin. How do you see that as a product line in terms of PvP betting versus sportsbook betting?
At Rivalry, we don't do PvP. I was a pioneer in PvP going back a long time. I don't believe in it for a lot of reasons. I don't think it's a viable business, and this loss aversion, the skill delta, being a game of skill kind of plays against you. At Rivalry, we're more innovating on the casino game side. We're creating casino games that are more akin to games that are popular within the esports category, because Tarzan-themed slot machines aren't interesting to a 23-year-old that's playing Call of Duty. So we're doing a lot of innovation on that front, and then also I believe we were one of the first books to launch mobile esports betting.
Oh, cool!
And we're seeing a tremendous amount of growth with our mobile, for mobile-based esports, and I think that's another huge opportunity. Again, bigger globally where there's clear guidelines right now, but another big opportunity for the US.
Just to add to that, I think the theme Billy is introducing, and that what Rivalry is really championing, is lending some of the gamification elements that exist in games and introducing that to the experience for the punters. If you manage to capture this generation, what we think is the next generation of betting consumers and media or entertainment consumers in general, you are really future-proofing your business. And these techniques and these experiences that you develop, they might just not only apply to your offering on esports per se, but on your entire portfolio. And it also steers you in a direction where, I love the Tarzan example, where you're making bets on the future, and you can really pioneer and set yourself apart. And I think in a very competitive reality, fighting for the consumer, looking at the recent news in the US and on what is paid out in bonuses and promotions, if you manage to develop a USP and create a reason for people to come to your site that's more experience and product driven, esports is where you can do this, because it is so data driven.
And we're proving that out in real time with the consumer. The under 30 consumer is so different. Average age of our consumer is 24 years old. At Rivalry, top line, just some KPIs that mystify a lot of people in the industry. Less than 1% of our business comes from affiliates. It's almost non-existent, completely non-material, on the affiliate side of thing. From a bonusing standpoint, we're completely unreliant. We're constantly very aggressively reducing our bonus spend, where if you look at numbers out of Ohio, where it's 30 cents, I think they said, out of every dollar was coming from bonus and promotion. If we look at over the past 12 months at Rivalry, it was 0.008 cents in terms of dollars spent, wagered on the site. So it's a totally different consumer. So to the point that you just made, it really is a bet on the future. Again, it's not all about at Rivalry esports betting. It's about bringing customers into an experience that they're familiar with, and then we're cross-selling them into traditional sports. NBA is really growing on our platform a lot, and casino as well. There's a lot of different ways to cross-sell them, but a lot of people come to us and they're like, why is Rivalry growing so fast? We put esports up on our website and it's not working. But if you add a tab in your sports book to just esports, and then it's think that that's going to come and attract the user, you're dead in the water. It's not going to work. This audience requires a completely different approach, and gaming is the language that they speak.
I think that's a really interesting point, and not wanting to be negative on the current situation, but I think there's a lot of future potential growth. I just don't think it's going to come from the big operators, because my experience elsewhere is that's what they do. You stick a tab on and go, hey, someone told me esports was big, there's esports. It doesn't do it. And given the market, I mean, we've just done a US white paper, and on sports betting, we haven't mentioned esports once, because there's so much more areas of growth for big operators to go from, but it's a chicken and egg. You know, if you then have an esports-focused sports book, that is actually going to start generating interest in esports and grow the market. And then the other point is your average age. You know, if you look at who the big spending cohorts are, demographics in US sports betting at the moment, they're not people who play esports.
Right.
But in 10 years' time, you know, these guys doing esports now, they're going to be the prime guys to go for. So I think it's a really exciting future. It's just how we get there. Because it's not by having FanDuel sticking an esports tab on their sports book and saying, well, that's it, we do esports.
Well, the interesting thing about that point, and I think it's worth saying, is like I've been moderating and participating in panels talking about esports crossing over to iGaming and traditional gaming, terrestrial gaming, for the last 7-8 years. And right from the first operators that hit the European market with legalized, regulated esports books, the advice has always been, please don't just stick a tab. Do something, commit. Get gamers who understand what games really are to market to gamers. So that message, for some reason, has been lost, right? But so maybe let's look at it from another angle in terms of cost of acquisition. Like Billy, when you were talking earlier in terms of not needing affiliates, not needing bonuses, could you give us an idea what your typical what's your average cost of acquisition like? Ballpark.
Globally, we're sub $100. We have profitable unit economics on every customer we acquire by a factor of over 2.5 to 3x. Mm-hmm. So we're and we're not relying on the bonuses and everything else. So a lot of our customers, again, we lead with esports, we bring them in, and to the point that you just made about not just sticking the tab and everything else, like, we're developing a brand relationship with them. And I think that's what's different, because they're coming to our product first as gamers. For the majority of our customers, the first online bet they've ever placed is on Rivalry, something like 60 to 70% of them. Wow. And they're sticking with us because we're speaking to them and growing with them in a way that relates to them. In a way like some of the other operators, I think, will be challenged to do unless you take a dedicated approach.
Dare I say that usual term that comes out is authenticity?
Yeah.
And that goes into that, right?
And I would just add to that the esports generation, they are very rewarding. If you care about them, if you give them the marketing, if you introduce them new things, make them happy, then they will spend a lot of money with your brand. But if you make any mistake, then they're very punishing. And then, like, you just take the Twitch, like, just open any Twitch and there's some streamer. Everything is fine. There's a lot of people just, subscribing and doing other things. But if you make any mistake, then they will punish you. And this is the same for the bookmakers and their brands. And I agree that it's very complicated to work with the esports audience. But this is the million-dollar question. For example, how to attract the millennial guys or Z generation to the casinos and other things. And that's what a lot of operators need to think about, like how I get more young audience to my site. And I agree, it's not just about the top, it's just about product differentiation, it's about marketing spend, it's about being clever about my audience. And even what we touched before, esports is not one thing. Yep. It's a lot of different sports. And different bookmakers can be good in different sports. So I can have a big Dota audience, so then I should focus on the sponsorship for Dota teams, or vice versa for CSGO, League of Legends. It's like with classical sports when I have a big user pool for soccer or football or something like this. So it's really not just about one thing. It's it's a product mix of everything.
Sure. And we had a question.
Oh. Wow.
We got a mic.
Official. Hi. Obviously, the betting that's being done is based on the data, which is what you guys have been talking about. But I'm curious if you ever foresee a day where instead of it becoming a bet and watch product where you bet and then you have to watch somewhere else, it's a watch and bet where you can do everything on the same application.
I mean, I think that's very much there already.
Yeah.
That's
for esports?
Definitely. What do you have in esports as a huge advantage is, and this is one of the
reasons
all
digital.
Esports became so big, is that the streaming and the consumption in the media space has always been freely available. There's a huge difference to how sports
Now,
is monetized.
I think you might be asking, like, is it going to be integrated into the game itself?
Correct.
Right?
Well,
that is a whole
Not
different...
necessarily into the
Yeah.
game, but into, I mean, if I go to FanDuel, I'm just using them as an
Right.
example, or Rivalry,
Right.
am I going to be able to
Oh,
watch?
yeah. That yes. The
Yeah,
answer to the question is
You
absolutely.
could watch the stream on our site
At the same time.
and a material amount of our volume is happening in game.
Yep.
Like typically the 80%
Right.
of volume is in
I mean-
live betting and 20% in pre-match. only.
Exactly. That is already happening.
So those streams come from like Twitch or YouTube or?
Yep.
Okay,
Or
so,
direct
so you're not,
license.
there's a
Or
delay.
direct license from the
Well, you
tournament.
would,
There's a
office.
significant delay between the data and the stream.
Yeah, but there's the nice thing is
yeah.
Yes.
Digital.
you know there's the freely accessible stream, which is great. It makes the game and the content accessible to a wide audience. This is where the fans mingle. But for our betting experience, at least like for our product set, it's not just about the data as in the in-game events feed. It always comes with a video feed via RTMP or other means from the production layer, so you can synchronize the betting experience with what's happening in the game. Because these games, many of them are very fast-paced. There's a lot going on all the time, and most of the things that go on all the time also matter. So, like, I'm being the data guy up here, of course, I can't emphasize enough, but in a digital sport, the quality of your data matters more than anywhere, arguably. And the beauty is, Hai mentioned at the start the complexity of the games. They are complex, and there's a lot going on, but it's all made of ones and zeros on some layer. And even despite, or even in the light of technological advances like tracking technology, computer vision in traditional sports, the data resolution that you get from the pitch is not comparable to what you can read from the game server if you can install your technology there. And we work exclusively with rights holders, so game developers or tournament organizers, and install our data extraction, processing tech there. And the expectation I mentioned earlier of the consumer is exactly what you're referencing here. You want to watch it, and you want to see betting as an additive action to the game, not something that detracts or moves the viewership somewhere else. And the rights holders we represent, they also see wagering as fulfilling this function, making the game accessible and exciting to a broader audience, and really adding to the experience for the viewer.
Put the skin in the game, right? Like
exactly.
when you bet
Literally.
for your favorite team, it's like you enjoy it much more if they win. If they
And in
lose,
some games, you can literally put skin in the game.
exactly.
But I think that to summarize that, one of the aspects that esports has a real edge, especially for in-run bettings and stuff like that, is that in any traditional sports, it has to happen in real life first before you digitize that data and put some application to use that data. In esports, it's the reverse. We actually get the data first. The graphics that you see is generated by that graphic, by that data. So the data quality is pure, is incredible. It actually happens before the graphics happens.
You're not limited to a field
Yeah,
of
you're
view.
not limited to...
There's no human error element.
Exactly. And if you feed it into AI, you can even do predictive betting, like some operators now have started doing, where they can anticipate what's the next bet that you may want to put on, and presents you with that bet with the odds information that says, hey, if you, next action is going to come up, it's going to be this particular action. Do you want to take the bet?
In a data-driven sport, that's possible.
Right.
And the nice thing is there's no concession like in sports between speed and granularity. You can nail both and do it in a super reliable and scalable fashion. And that's where the excitement comes from. Being a data platform is exciting, but our engineers, people who care about big data, they love working with game data. Not just because they're fans of the computer games and like to operate in the franchise they love, but because it's incredibly rich and
So we're running out of time. So I'd like to throw in this for everybody to close, everybody to come in with their option. So the title of the thing is Winning Future of Soccer Bet. I think everybody here thinks it is a good investment going forward. But as you can see on this stage, nobody is a US operator. So what is, we know we get data, great odds from just the gentleman on the table, right? You get all the odds you want. You get quality data from Moritz. You have all the industry stats that you can get from H2. And you've got proven operator here that has, incredibly low acquisition values, conversions, and traffic. So what do you think is preventing esports being a bigger product right now in the US market? Let's start
With me,
with
okay.
Vladimir.
It was mentioned here before. It's a chicken egg problem. Is the first thing, and the second thing is regulation.
All right. Moritz?
Regulation, yeah. Although we're seeing a good trend, Seth was mentioned earlier, there are now better frameworks, and hopefully they will serve as a blueprint for many other states to adopt it. And in the light of where esports regulation is versus sports regulation, it makes sense as an operator that you want to go after sports first, because you're addressing a larger market. You're not losing out on marketing to jurisdictions where you're live, but you can't be live for esports yet. So what is the question that this poses is, we are navigating towards a point in time where you can't really capitalize on it. So wouldn't you want to set up now and be ready for when the time comes to be at the forefront?
Yeah, again, I think it is the size of the prize, chicken and egg. But I think one intermediate thing we could do, and what we're seeing in Europe is, what sometimes isn't classed as esports by true esports fans, is traditional sports games like NBA 2K or FIFA in the UK. They get put on the soccer site, as infill instead of virtual. So it's where you can actually use it as a filler when there's no basketball. Do they start putting on the basketball tab NBA 2K and get people into esports that way, to then move across maybe to some of the other gaming?
So Billy, you get the last word.
Yeah, I would echo what they said about regulation, and aside from that, it's really just having the right product and right go-to-market approach, which I think is a big challenge for a lot of operators, but I think we're demonstrating that it's possible. I think the consumers of gaming and gaming content globally are very similar, from all over the place. So the fact that it's working and growing rapidly all over the world, I think is a bit of a crystal ball into what the future of the US looks like.
Yeah. And I think, it's worth noting again, for many years, the hard market to crack is the millennials. I mean, the millennials are getting old, man. Now we're talking about the Zoomers. And if you're talking about the Zoomers, this is the beginning of that generation where kids that are of the impressionable age now, like say preteens, going into teens, they're not playing catch with their dads. They're playing Mario. They're playing Call of Duty. Those are the games that are mixed in with the catch and the baseball and the football that they're playing with their parents, video games. So I don't think anybody on the stage would disagree that esports is not a fad. It's not going away anytime soon. So it's like Ed was saying, start now rather than having to react, or even Moritz was saying.
Yeah, it's a whole generation of people that grew up on the internet is now coming of age, and the sport of the internet is video games.
Yep.
It's undeniable. So this whole next generation, like the way that we grew up with baseball and football, they don't give a shit. The reason that all the professional sports team owners spent all that money in North America investing in esports teams is because they look at the average age of an MLB fan, 55, 56, and all the parents bring kids to games and they just want to sit on the phone and they're watching YouTube and Twitch. This is all happening. It's an inevitability. So I definitely think a big market.
Well, thank you so much. We're out of time, and we actually, because of the short time span, we never did introductions. Look everybody up online. You can find out how to contact them. Thank you, everybody, for the panel. Thanks for being here.